Welcome to Compassionate Conversations, where we push the boundaries of comfort to empower you to become all that you dream of being. Hi, I'm Esther Kane. I'm a Canadian psychotherapist and the author of It's Not About the Food, A Woman's Guide to Making Peace with Food and Our Bodies. For over 25 years, I've been helping people to overcome problematic relationships to food and their body image. And to my great delight, my book has helped thousands of people to do just that. I decided to do this series where I interview other body image warriors who I respect and love their work in order to help us form more of a community around talking about our disordered relationship with food and our bodies, in the hopes that we will find strength in each other's stories and share some really helpful tools and methods that you can use in order to heal your relationship with food and how you see your body. If you're thinking, I don't know if I have an eating disorder, so maybe these videos won't be meaningful to me, please give it a chance. When I tell people, for example, that I'm an eating disorder therapist, people automatically think eating disorders are just anorexia and bulimia. And while I treat those issues in my practice, the bulk of my clients tend to fall into the category of emotional eating. People who eat when they're mad, sad, glad, and fearful. There's all kinds of reasons that we turn to food. And they are usually the people that are yo-yo dieters, that do obsessive exercising. Maybe they are in middle age and their body's metabolism has changed and they've put on some extra weight and they just can't seem to get it off. All of these people fall into the category of some type of disordered eating pattern. So if that applies to you, please stay tuned. I'm going to be interviewing some fabulous people in this series who will definitely give you some great ideas and tips in order to make peace with food and your body. Welcome to Compassionate Conversations, the Body Image series. I am so excited about today's episode where I will be interviewing Dr. Vera Tarman. Dr. Vera Tarman is a medical addiction specialist working in the field since 2004. She is a world-renowned food addiction expert who writes, speaks, and treats people struggling with food addiction. She is the author of this wonderful book, Food Junkies, Recovery from Food Addiction. She co-hosts the popular Food Junkies podcast. She also spearheaded the first inpatient and outpatient programs in Canada for food addiction. Dr. Tarman's main goal is to put food addiction on the table of services offered to people suffering from addictions. As a recovering food addict herself, Dr. Tarman knows that freedom from food addiction is food serenity. Welcome, Vera.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Esther, for asking me to come onto your show.
Oh, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled. Yes. So I've been such a fan of yours for such a long time. I love your book, recommend it all the time to my clients. And I just think you are an absolute maverick in the field. And I bow to you. I think it's incredibly brave, courageous, and yeah, I think you are ahead of your time, to put it mildly. So I want to start, and I'm sure my listeners and watchers are very interested in learning your own personal story with food addiction, which led you to the work you do.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to say thank you for your absolutely delicious words about me. They're wonderful. Thank you so much. It's always nice to hear such a glowing introduction. We can end the show right now because that's
you got your fill.
I got my fill. Anyway, thank you. My story, I think the more I tell my story, and especially the more I hear about other people's stories, I think, I just fit right in with everybody, every other woman in early, like teenage and 20s. especially in the university context, where I looked at myself and I thought, oh my God, you're talking about body image. My body image was, I used to call myself things like the Russian elephant, because I read
Oh,
Dostoevsky and things like that. So I like the Russian
wow.
elephant.
Very
I-
intellectual.
yeah, but I was intellectualizing my self-loathing, which was that I just hated
Yeah.
how I looked. And I look now at my weight, and it was
Yes.
not that bad. Like, where
Right.
did you get that crazy idea?
I know.
Anyway,
So many women say that.
yeah. So I decided that I was going to, I don't know, I guess it was on a self kick. I was trying to quit alcohol. I was in early university, and as a teenager, kind of let myself go. But I thought, I can't do this. I want to, buckle down. And so it sort of cut the alcohol out completely.
Okay.
And I also thought, I'll just improve, do a general self-improvement. And so I thought, I'm going to cut out all the junk food, and I'm going to, in fact, let's just cut out most of the food, because then I'll lose all that weight that I
Oh, wow.
saw in my body. And I found the first year, the first 6 months was exhilarating, because I was losing weight and losing weight.
Right.
But I went too far. Like, we addicts, we don't just do a little, we go all the way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when I saw that I was losing weight, I thought, great, I'm on a roll. I'm just gonna cut down my calories even more. I did the calorie counting thing, and I was down to like 600 or 800 calories a day. And I'm
Oh.
hungry all the time. But
Oh, and what height are you?
I'm 5'7", and at that
Wow.
time, I think I was like only 140 or 145 pounds, but I wasn't
Which
like
is probably at
slim.
least average.
Yeah, it's a body mass index of probably normal or
Yeah.
slightly overweight. Anyway,
Wow.
um,
So you were starving yourself,
I was
really?
starving myself, and then I got to this phase, which I think this is how eating disorders start, where I started to say, okay, I've reached my goal weight. I think my goal weight was, I just want to get to 120 pounds. I reached that, and I thought, you know what? Why not do 110 pounds? I reached 110,
Good.
and then my goal was, let's do 100. And
Oh,
my weight, so I lost my period. I
yeah.
started to get dizzy and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, exactly the way, I was on the road to anorexia, but I
Yeah.
would say that I was actually, like, I think it could have gotten a lot worse.
Yeah.
In my day, this was in the 1970s, eating
Okay.
disorders was just beginning to be
Yeah.
talked about. It was
I
just,
think Karen Carpenter, didn't she
yeah,
die?
yeah. She was around that time, and I mean, she was a little older than me, but I loved her music, and yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And at some point, I just realized, I think when I got really dizzy and sort of almost fell down some stairs, I thought, I have to stop this. And so I just thought, okay, I'll stop. I'm at a good weight, 100, and I think I got as low as 104 pounds or something.
Jeez.
Which was too low. And I used to look at those pictures and go, wow, do I ever look good? I could lose more, but I look good. Anyway,
Yeah.
I thought I'll
You
just
get the
stop.
distorted body image. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then what happened when I decided I better eat, I thought I'll just start eating normal, but it didn't work that way. I just went binge.
Yeah, because you were starving physically.
Yeah, exactly. And then it became a thing of, oh my God, I'm eating so much, I'm going to gain that weight. Then I try to restrict, and I got into that whole restricting, I guess that's bulimia. And it
Yeah.
was to the point where I was afraid to be alone at night, because that would mean that it would be me and the fridge and my willpower.
Binge monster came out.
Exactly. And I even went to the emergency to say, please lock me up, because if I stay, I would
Wow.
binge. I mean, I developed purging too, so that
Yeah,
I could keep eating. And I'd say, I'll just keep throwing up and eating the whole night, please. And they didn't know what to do, because it was a new field. Anyway, that
Oh,
was a monster. That was like, I
yeah.
couldn't believe that monster.
Yeah. And at
was
what
that?
ages were you, Vera?
I was in my early 20s.
Early 20s.
Yeah, and at university, and somewhere along the line, I did what we say in the addiction field. I did the geographical cure, and this was the era in the 70s, 80s, when we all went to Europe. We went to Israel, we went to Africa, we went to India. So I thought, I'm going to go to England, and then I wanted to go to Israel, and I wanted to go to India. So I'm going to do that, and I thought, This
Live
will
on a kibbutz.
exactly. This will be solve the problem because I'll be so busy, milking cows at the kibbutz because I was at I'll be so busy visiting the art galleries at in London. But that didn't happen. What happened was is I stuck in my own little hotel or hostel and brought food in and forget about the stuff. I did what I had to do at the kibbutz. I did what I had in India. It's like I was in my own place eating, chapati, banana with.
You're just binging on different foods. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like I brought it with me. And
Wherever I go, there I am.
exactly. And I didn't realize that this is an addiction. Now, in that era, I could have been diagnosed as having an eating disorder, and I would have said yes because I binge and purge. And boy, does that make sense. But years later, when I started to learn more about addiction, that's when I said, the picture of addiction just fits much more. Because the way I couldn't stop thinking about food was the same way I couldn't stop thinking about pot. There was a time when I smoked a lot of pot, especially in India, there's a ton of it there. And whenever I found a drug, I didn't need as much. Like it was just to my mind, all the same thing.
All interconnected, maybe.
Absolutely. So that's
substances, there's substances. I mean, regardless, some will kill you faster.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Wow.
And it wasn't until I stopped when I said, look, let's just treat this as an addiction, because nobody was using those words then, or if they were, I wasn't running into them or reading their books. Now I know that actually there were people in various parts, but we didn't have social media to know that we exist. When I finally said, just treat this as an addiction and stop, that's when I finally got peace.
Wow.
Which, the addiction model, stop your trigger foods.
Yes.
So that's my story.
Amazing, Vera. And we'll get more into the distinction between eating disorders and food addiction, because I know you and I love debating that. It's great. Yeah. And right now. So the question is, many of my listeners, watchers struggle with eating disorders as well as food addiction, or one or the other. I'm sure they'd like to know what the difference is between food addiction and an eating disorder. And I realize you have a whole chapter on this in your book, which people should buy in show notes. But can you please give us a shorthand of what the differences are?
Okay. And also, by the way, if on the Food Junkies podcast, we interviewed you, we interview a number of people to talk about that, because it's such a muddy issue. And clinically, if you ask me what's the difference, I'd say it's really hard to say this is what one looks like and one looks like, because they look the same. And some of the behavior is the same, and the insanity is the same, the shame and the why can't I control myself, it's the same. And fundamentally, the way we see it now is that there's a kind of like a mechanism of action that's different. It looks the same, but behind the scenes there's something different, and then the treatment is different. And so you can tell me, Esther, as I speak for eating disorder, if you agree with this, that it's mainly a perspective that crazy behavior that looks like addiction, whatever, is really a symptom of a psychic distress. Like you're using your food and your eating as a way to deal with stuff that's happening right now, like difficulties out there in the world with work or partner, or for trauma from the past. And once you deal, so then don't focus on the food, focus on the person and their psychic issue, and then you can eat anything, or within moderation. The food addiction model is
so that's just to be clear for listeners. You were speaking specifically to eating disorders, and when I was interviewed on your podcast, which people should listen to as well, because it's really cool to do this back and forth, I was talking about more the emotional psychic distress around eating disorders, and we also were talking about the physicality, the physiological addictive piece around food addiction.
Exactly. And actually what we talked about with you, and this is really important for people to know, is you can have both, which makes it even more crazy.
Yes, I've had both.
And that's actually why I brought you up there, because it's not that clear cut. But
No.
if you want to start with the conceptual clarity, that would be it. It's a psychic issue, which you then use food or eating to manage your psyche, because you don't know what else to do. Whereas with the food addiction model, like you said, the physicality, it's whatever I am. I could be in great distress, or I could be happy. I could be normal. I could just be bored. I'm nothing. I'm just whatever. And then I take a substance and put it into my mouth, and it triggers the phenomena of craving. So it's an external event impacting on my psychic, and my emotional issues might make me more susceptible.
Yes.
To physicality. Another person might be like, whatever. I just lost my job. Okay. Somebody else would go out and get drunk. Another person would go out and binge. That person just says whatever, because they have other tools or skills. But it's the fact that once you're there, and this is the phrase we use in addiction all the time. One is never enough, and one is too many, and 1,000 is not enough. Because once you have the one, you didn't want the one, you didn't want anything, but then you had the one. And
once you start, you can't stop.
Exactly.
It's like
piece.
It's like me with roasted cashews. I can't. If I open a bag, if I smell, it's just dangerous. Go near
that's an addictive piece.
Totally.
Totally, for sure. And if you are using food, like in the eating disorder model, as a way to manage distress, and then you're now triggered from the food itself, you're in a double bind.
Totally. Wow. Oh, there's so many things I want to say and ask, but we'll keep going with the questions. That's beautiful. So for people who may be listening or watching this, I'm guessing many are thinking, how do I know if I'm addicted to food? Is there some test that they can take to find out? How do you assess for and diagnose food addiction?
So there are tests, but here's an important thing to know about any kind of diagnostic test. There's a term that's called sensitivity. How sensitive is the test? And specificity. How specific is it for any test? And sensitivity is if I have a condition, how likely will that test be to find the condition? And so we have wonderful tests if you have any inkling of food addiction, we'll pick it up. It'll sniff it out. We're not going to miss it. That's sensitivity. Specificity is when you say you have a diagnosis and it's only that. It's not other stuff. And these tests are not specific, because I will smell out a person with an eating disorder with my test and a food addiction, but I won't be able to narrow it. That's the problem. We'll find it. Won't be able to say one or the other. So that's what's important. So anybody who wants to know, how do I know? I can give you the food addiction questions, but it's not going to tell you that you're not actually an eating disorder in the eating disorder group, or that you don't have that too. You'll catch both. So it'll be things like, let's just do an experiment, Esther. You put on your eating disorder diagnostic clinician hat. And tell me if my questions, which suit the food addict, would suit an eating disorder. I'm sure they will.
Let's see.
Do you eat more than you plan to?
Yes.
Do you feel like you want to control it and you can't?
Yes. So I'm answering as someone with an eating disorder.
Yes, exactly. And I'm going to say absolutely yes. Food addict would say yes. So then the next question might be, do you feel embarrassed about the way that you eat? Like you'd rather eat alone?
I call it apologizing for being alive. The shame and embarrassment so deep.
And do you feel shame with the way that you eat?
Oh, absolutely.
Like you'd rather be alone rather than have somebody see. Do you lie about the way you eat?
Absolutely.
Like the food addict will say, I don't know why I'm not losing weight. I eat salad and what are you eating? But then I find out later in the conversation that they were eating up the chips or the ice cream late at night, and somehow that didn't get that was told to me. So is there unintentional or intentional lying? Yes. Would the eating disorder person say yes?
Absolutely. I come across it all the time, and I call it sneak eating and sneaky, so I say to my clients that basically, you're only sick as your secrets, and that you really need to come clean with me. And, I'm not going to judge you, but if you can't come clean with me and yourself, you're in trouble. You can't get anything figured out.
Okay. So another one is, do you ever throw away food only to pull it out later and eat?
Oh, I hear those stories all the, I used to do that. Yeah, I hear all the
Yeah.
time.
You
People
see-
put cigarette ashes on top of it. and
oh
they'll
my
still
God.
eat it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you steal food?
Yes, they say that all the time.
Will you drive, like, go to any lengths to get your food? You know,
Absolutely.
it's
I hear
winter,
these
but
stories every day.
absolutely. So you see, we're saying yes to the same thing, but here's maybe a difference. If you haven't had it for a while, whatever your favorite food is, and you have a little bit, are you able to stop at that point?
So, yeah, okay, so that's where, Vera,
If you're
I
feeling okay.
differentiate.
Yeah.
That's where I differentiate between food addiction and an
Yeah.
eating disorder.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
because I find that mostly with sugar and refined flours, that's where people get into big trouble.
oh, yeah. Okay.
If they're a food addict.
Okay, if they're a food addict, but if they're an eating disorder person, what happens? Like, if you're
That can be variable. Yeah.
yeah, it can be
Some
very
people can just have a little and be fine, but
right, especially
the
if they're
food
feeling,
addict, no.
no, especially if they're feeling pretty good. Like,
Yes.
I've gotten a load off my mind. Thank you. I'm feeling much better about my relationship, whatever. So
Yeah.
then you can go out and have a little piece of something and you're okay. The food addict, forget it. The
I
moment
know. All or nothing.
they're all
Yeah.
enough, right? I mean, so Esther, the food addict part of you and the person listening, if you are fine, and then it doesn't have to be sugar, it could be the roasted cashews. You just have a little bit, and now you're off and running, and
Yeah.
then you start to go, what's happening? I thought I was okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
addiction. That's food addiction.
I know for myself,
Inability
Vera,
to
that
stop.
there's certain foods I don't eat anything sweet, anything that
Yeah.
tastes sweet, because I'm hardcore addicted to sweet,
Yeah.
even
And
sweet
another-
vegetables.
And another one that might be different, and this is another fundamental difference question. So if somebody's going, okay, I know I got a problem, but which one is it? Would be if you've stopped, let's say both of us have not had sugar for a month, the food addict versus the eating disorder person. And then I say to you, well, you want to have a little bit now. I know intuitively as a food addict, I'm going to say no. I have more peace. I don't feel like I'm deprived and wanting something. I'm like relieved that I'm not in that. Whereas maybe the eating disorder person will be saying, yeah, I think it's okay. It's the holiday season. I should be able to have a little bit of.
Such a good distinction.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's like, when I think of that, it's like, no, it's immediately my answer is absolutely not. My mental health, it's not worth it.
It's not worth
risking my mental health. No.
But do you have patients who you would classify as only eating disorder, who could probably say, when
Absolutely.
I'm okay, when I'm feeling good,
absolutely,
I can have a little bit. I think that's the main thing. That's the main thing. And that's why it's so important to distinguish, because if you're a clinician and you want to treat both groups of people, you don't want to tell the eating disorder client, you should restrict. They're going to feel deprived, restricted,
exactly,
and it's going to make them think of their anorexic behavior.
Exactly, it's going to make it worse.
Exactly, it's going to make it worse. And you don't want to tell the food addict, don't restrict. That's not good. It's actually part of when in fact it's actually life-saving.
Yeah, and I found that working with men, I work mostly with women, but when I work with men, it seems, not all the time, but a lot of the time, it seems very straightforward in terms of, tell them to stop eating a certain trigger food and they're fine. They never have to come back to me.
Wow.
Like, yeah, it seems very straightforward in a lot of those cases. So not a lot of nuance.
Must be nice to have people listen to you.
Oh, well, yeah, but then they don't pay me again. So
yeah. But are those the food addict men or the eating disorder men? Okay. All right.
Food addict men, the eating disorder men, it's a lot more the psychological, deep, emotional stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And so, but it's like, stop eating gummies. I said that to 3 men. They were eating gummies, binging on these. Stop eating them. They were fine. They didn't need to come back.
Wow. Yeah. Right. Okay. So there you go. Yeah.
It's so interesting, hey? So in your book, you talk about stages of food addiction. Yes. So I think that's quite fascinating. Could you please describe these stages?
Yeah, so the stages are interesting to know because they will actually say to help a person figure out why one food plan works for one person and doesn't work for another, or why one works now and it didn't before, or vice versa.
Okay.
So the stages of food addiction are actually categorized by Phil Wardell, who's been working in the area of food addiction like since the 70s and 80s. And he said there are, and I looked at his model and I thought, this really fits. I mean, he didn't have the sort of biology behind it, but it's like a lot of stuff. We've been working on the seat of our pants, figuring out what works, and then later we figure out why.
In retrospect.
So we kind of realize that there's a early stage of food addiction and a middle and a late stage, or some people classify it as 4 categories. I think he does actually. But the idea is it is a chronic, it stays aggressive, it gets worse condition. And chronic meaning you don't heal from this, and then that's the end of it. You can retard the process, just like with diabetes. Once you're diabetic, you can stop the whole process of getting sicker with the consequences of too much sugar in your blood because you're eating well and taking your meds. But the moment you stop doing that, you're back with massive diabetes. Similar to this.
So sorry, are you saying that basically once a food addict, always a food addict?
Yes. You can be in recovery, or you can be like, I like to see it more as the food addiction is there, but it's latent. It's like cancer where you got most of it, but you're never really sure it's gone. It's dormant. You can be.
I totally agree with that, personally and professionally. Yes.
Yeah. So the moment I go into a sugar environment and have a little, even though I haven't had sugar for maybe 15 years, and I'm not wanting it, but it's Christmas coming, and there's tasty food. And if I were to think, what the hell, I'll have one, I'm back. I'll be back.
You and me.
It's not going to take me years to get there, like a newcomer would. So there's early stage, and that's the stage where you may still think, I'm struggling a little bit. Like the fact that there's a diagnosis, you're not convinced. It's just beginning. You're noticing that you're struggling with some foods, but not all. And you can put rules on, like only Sundays, or only on weekends, or only on my birthday, and you might get away with it because the disease has not progressed. So that one little doesn't fire you up enough. Like basically what we're talking about is the dopamine receptors have not changed enough. But then middle stage, you continue to eat the stuff, you struggle, your struggle is getting harder, and eventually you lose the struggle, and you go, oh, here I go again. Another night, 3 nights this week where I've eaten too much. And you're realizing that it's actually better to stop. Like that concept that, hey, maybe this is addictive is there.
I just have to say, Vera, it sounds so much like the stages of change to me.
It is actually.
In terms of pre-contemplation, like denial, pre-contemplation, contemplation, and then like reality. Okay, I got a problem. I got to do something about it.
Yeah, that's right. And where did the stages of change come from? But the addiction model, right?
Addiction model. Yes.
Yeah. So it is really just the gradual progression of the addiction model. But the difference, where it's useful is when a person's in early stage. I might be able to say to them, oh, okay, Esther, you're telling me you're having troubles with food. You can still control it, but troubles, you know what? Okay, you want to be able to, during a holiday season, have a little bit of something. Fine. If you can do that, but don't eat stuff when you don't need to. Don't let yourself be in that environment so that those changes will continue to happen. Just have it once every, like we used to do pre-1970s, when a dessert really was a treat.
Yeah, right. When you didn't get it with every meal.
You didn't get it, and because there was such little exposure, people didn't actually get addicted. They may have eaten too much on the night that they ate it, but they could have long periods of time where they didn't use it at all and they were fine. So that's it.
I just have to interrupt there, Vera, with a story of a client of mine recently who had serious food addiction, and it was to desserts, sweets. Yeah. And when I did the family history and the history of food stuff, she was served in her home dessert with every meal.
Yeah.
What on earth is that?
She's exposed to the drug food on every
meal. So what do you expect?
the condition continues. So if there's a parent listening to a child, like if they have children, if you don't want them to get into my position, into your position where they can never have a treat again, then make sure that you limit their treats so that they don't actually develop the attachment, which happens through time and exposure.
And also I see it with young new parents too, that it's kind of just waving a flag. It's like if the kid is being really awful or won't go to get dressed and go to school, they give them candy or something, and then they just kind of cave and they don't want to do it, but it's the only way to get them out the door.
I know, but that's like giving them a cigarette. They're going to become a smoker eventually, I know what you mean. So early stage, you can still get, like we say, there's the bus. You go to get on the bus of the addiction until you finally get off through death, because that's where it goes eventually.
Yeah.
If you get yourself off the bus early enough, you might even be able to moderate. And if you have an eating disorder, and that concept of moderate eating may well work, because you deal with the psychic stress. You're not using the food inappropriately anymore. And so, yes, once in a while will work.
Yeah.
That's where that works. Middle stage, you've already, the tentacles, the receptors, the neurons have already started to fuse together. And so that you have one, you want this, is already fusing together. It's a little harder. And there's where we start to say, no, you got to do abstinence. You got to do abstinence. But maybe not abstinent of everything. Don't have sugar, don't have flour, but you can still have nuts if you can. You can still have dairy. You can still have fruit, that kind of thing. So the diet is what I'm suggesting in a middle stage is going to be different than early stage, where I'm saying have anything, just restrict your junk food. It's okay, restrict the junk food, but you can still eat a lot of vegetables and fruits, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
End stage, the person is so wired that now like, basically their food choices get smaller and smaller and smaller, so that they can't have any junk food. No.
And are they like usually, and you're the doctor, but are they often insulin resistant?
Yes, it's often happening parallel. And thank you for noticing that, because insulin resistance and dopamine resistance, because that's really what's happening in the brain, becoming resistant to the charge of food, or you're becoming hyper triggered. I mean, it's basically an impaired, inappropriate response to sugar. Sugars. It's not enough, so you need more, or you have a bit and you want more. It's a kind of confused response, but it's a hyper triggered response, just like sugar with insulin. A person becomes insulin resistant and essentially dopamine resistant at the same time. So I think that diabetics, type 2 diabetics, we haven't actually done the stats, but I bet you there's a high likelihood of food addicts in the diabetic population. We know
that's who I'm treating a lot and are you finding, Vera, that more and more people are getting diagnosed with type 2 diabetes? I mean, it seems like now
it is an epidemic, and similarly with obesity, the two go hand in hand. And we know, we have done the stats that in the obese population, which basically means body mass index of over 25, which isn't really, basically just overweight, like 30 or 40 pounds, and then onwards. We know that the level of food addiction is probably in the 60-70% of people who have a high body mass index are food addicts. In the general population, the stats are somewhere between, either depends on who and what research you're looking at, but it's between 10 and 20% of the population are food addicts. But in the obese population, it's way higher, which makes sense. It makes sense. Because
sorry.
No, I'm just saying the same thing.
We're both so excited. You tell this story in your book. I reread it the other day about this patient of yours that you had to go to his home because he was so overweight. That's a fascinating. Would you say he was end stage? And do you want to just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, he was.
That was such a powerful story.
Yeah. So this is a guy, Lawrence, and I was really struck by him. I guess because he really got under my, some people you just connect with them on some level, and I do, because I'm an addictions doctor, and friends of his who, I mean, it was a community of people who used heroin, who wanted to, they're getting older, it's hard to maintain that lifestyle. They wanted to get on methadone. to get off the heroin. And so I was treating them, and then their friend said, well, we have this friend of ours who he was from, I think he was from New York, actually, an art dealer, very, very charming, whatever, who came, and basically a lot of people, they get their drug money by selling drugs to friends. And his sort of small community that fed his own habit were starting to get clean on methadone, and he wasn't getting any patients in, or whatever. And he wanted to get off too. So as he was reducing, he started to eat more. And he reached a level of weight where it was really hard to go outside, literally go outside. He was, I think the last time he was weighed was like at 400 to 500 pounds. I don't know what his actual weight was, because at a certain point, he literally couldn't even get out of the bed. He had a thing that was hanging, somebody must have strung something up, an iron thing, a ring that he would have to actually pull himself up so that he could go and pee in the bucket next to his bed. Like he couldn't even walk. And so anyway, so they said, would you go to his house and give him methadone, because he can't go to the pharmacy. The pharmacists aren't going to go there every day, like forget it. So anyway, we made a deal that I would come there, and then so now he wasn't using cocaine anymore, which was part of his habit. He wasn't now using what do you call it, heroin anymore. He was dependent on people to bring him food and cigarettes and whatever heroin he could get. They weren't coming anymore. And so he would say to me, Vera, the only thing I have left, like I can't go out and play basketball. I can't go out and see friends. I'm too embarrassed. I'm basically, he was a shut-in in this place, and he had all these things all over the place, like beautiful things that he picked up from Peru and all that sort of stuff in his travels, that he had thought one day he would sell, or like have some kind of curiosity shop, which is what his apartment was like. Anyway, he would say to me, what have I got left but food? Like you're telling me I'm just going to sit there and watch TV all day. So I tried many ways to motivate this poor guy. And, I think, there was a certain point at which I thought, I can't keep doing this. It's exhausting to come once a week. And just around that time when I was feeling like I'm exhausted, one of his friends called and said he died of a heart attack. Because how can you not when you're so and he knew he had blood pressure issues, but was he going to go to a doctor for a doctor just to say, you got to lose weight, buddy?
And I'm just wondering, just from my therapist hat here, if you could magically remove the shame from that gentleman, in a situation, do you think he would have had a different outcome, Vera? If he didn't have shame about the food addiction and that just
his weight, it's the
fat his weight. Do you think he could have made it somehow?
He would have had a fighting chance. He would have lasted longer. He would have been on the road to recovery, and then would have felt like there was hope. He felt hopeless. Like, what am I going to do? So, when you're that heavy, like, he had friends. There was no way he was going to go, and they remembered him as this charming guy that was, about the town, going, what happened to you? What happened to you, Lawrence? That's like the shame, you have no problem fat shaming people, which of course makes it a problem. I think that was actually a bigger issue than the addiction shame, but that was an issue too. But would it have made a difference? Probably. I see now people who are able to, because of virtual, we have, we're able to stuff online, who do get past that. I see a lot of hope. Of hope. And by the way, I want to say some of it is surgery helps, but not all of it. I've seen people
I work a lot with bariatric surgery and stuff.
We have a lot of people that have what we call triple numbers, and will lose the weight, and they might not be slim, but they're significantly different, like lost of 100 pounds or something like that.
What I've seen with bariatric surgery a lot too, I've followed many people through it, and I've done workshops for people who are contemplating bariatric surgery, and I talk about the emotional piece. And if you don't do that work, you're just gonna. So what I've found in my work, unfortunately, is that many of my bariatric clients end up with eating disorders after the surgery.
Yeah.
They binge and purge. Yeah.
Yeah. Or they get a food addiction. Like, I mean, one of the things that we've discovered or learned over time with bariatric is that their chance of becoming alcoholic is significantly higher.
Yes.
And,
yes.
you know, it makes sense because when you've had your intestines both reduced to capacity so that you can't eat that much.
Size of a banana.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to eat like Brussels sprouts and broccoli. I mean, it's just impossible. You're going to eat mush and mush.
And then you eat junk food.
Exactly.
So a lot of my clients that have had the bariatric surgery eat the crappiest, most processed food you can imagine. Then they get addicted to that. And then they got a whole other problem.
Exactly. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And they become alcoholic. And maybe one way to make the illustration is that if I've not had the surgery, have a glass of wine, I'll get an impact that a person with bariatric surgery, well, put it this way, if they have one glass of wine, they will get the impact that I would need for 2 or 3 glasses.
Oh, really?
They need 1/3 of what I need to get the same impact. But if we're both having a glass of wine, they're going to drink their full glass, which is essentially 3 glasses to my 1. And so if we do 2, they basically had a bottle of wine. You keep doing that. And they think two glasses of wine, no problem. That's okay. No, it's not. It's actually a bottle of wine.
Equivalent.
Yeah.
Wow.
And similarly with food, you get a stronger bang for your buck. And that's where addiction kicks in.
That is so true. So true. So I wanted to ask you another thing. So with your vast experience as medical director at Renaissance Addiction Rehab Center in Toronto, what stands out as the main difference between food addiction and addictions to other substances such as alcohol and drugs? Well, because you've been doing this work for so long.
Yeah. I would say the main difference is people are, I mean, I know there's stigma about addiction, but within the addiction world, people really respect some of the addictions like crystal meth and opiates because we see people dying like right away. Alcohol, and it's like, okay, if you want to quit drinking, bravo for you. I have yet to hear somebody say, whoa, you're a sugar addict and you're going to quit sugar. Bravo for you. Yes, in my little community, but not out there. They're going,
no, wow. People think I'm insane. I mean, I try not to talk about it, but people always say stupid things to me about, oh, you can just have a little bit. And
Esther, what are you on another crazy kick? Like, that's what they say to me.
Oh, me too. Me too. You and your crazy diet.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a main difference, that there's not the same respect, but there's the same availability. Like,
oh, it's crazy. I know you can get 24/7. You can go to anywhere, convenience store, and get your drug of choice if you're a food addict.
So
and it's socially sanctioned, don't you think?
It's socially sanctioned. Not only is it socially sanctioned, but it's socially pushed. Like if I don't at holiday time, if I don't eat your dessert, you're going to be offended. Whereas if I buy you a pack of cigarettes and you say I don't smoke, you just say, oh, sorry.
Exactly. Such a good point.
So that's a big difference. But other than that, so that's a sort of social awareness or social disapproval. But within the actual addiction realm, I actually think it's more addictive, sugar, than some of these other drugs, because it's so insidious. Like anytime, it's like it's equivalent to cigarettes, and you'll hear a lot of people saying that quitting smoking was harder than quitting alcohol.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
And sugar, do I have this right, Vera? Does it stay in your body for a whole week? I heard that somewhere. That the detox is like very long for sugar.
Oh yeah, okay, sure, but it's long for the others as well. The thing about the others is you get a big reaction. So if I'm an alcoholic and because what is alcohol? Fermented sugar. I mean, it's still the effects of sugar. It'll take me. I'm going to have the shakes and the sweats, and they're very visible, and they kind of subside within, it's a few days, but probably 10 days or so. With sugar, it's not, you do get a bit of shakes and sweats, but it's more mental cravings, irritability. But that does last longer. But it just like with cigarettes, it's because it's not just the physical addiction, there's all the cues. When you're doing something regularly, like smoking, how many times does a smoker smoke? At least 20, 30 times a day. You know, similarly, when you're a food addict, you're not having just 3 meals a day. You're grazing in between. You're doing, you're feeding the sort of, when you do something regularly all the time, it's going to be more addictive. Crack, crystal meth, they are so addictive because you get them a massive high, and then 20 minutes later, you're wanting it again. And so you could, if you had the money, literally spend thousands of dollars a day. I know people who have become crystal meth addicts and crack addicts in retirement. They had a nice retirement.
Wow.
This is where
that's an interesting way to spend your elder years.
Exactly, and spend your retirement fund, so you have nothing left. Like in 3 years, and it was supposed to
whatever
last
happened to getting a home in Florida for part of the year.
Exactly, right. So
maybe they get into crack in Florida.
I don't know, but when you have something that's so frequent, it becomes highly addictive, and food fits into that category. And I've had many people, including Lawrence, who said, my guy in the book, and patients of mine, not just him, who said, I quit the opiates because I got methadone. I quit the cocaine. I'm trying to quit the cigarettes. I can't quit the food.
Oh, God. Well, you can't quit food because you'll die. You have to eat, right?
Exactly.
So we were talking about when you interviewed me for your podcast about the lion in the cage analogy. That basically, when you're an alcoholic, you put the plug in the jug and you're done. But with food, it's like a lion that you have to lock up in a cage, and then you have to unlock it and take it for a walk 3 times a day. Exactly. It's very different. And the other thing I just wanted to reflect on, Vera, was I was thinking about, because I have a lot of clients who are cross-addicted, of course, who have, say a lot of alcoholism and eating disorder crossovers.
Yes, I'm not surprised.
And so they belong to AA first, right? And then they get food addiction is kind of the secondary thing. But they talk about the problem of going to an AA meeting. What do they do to celebrate your anniversary? Cake. And then there's always cakes. And then there's coffee, and people put copious amounts of sugar in the coffee at AA meetings.
Yeah. That's
so there's a lot of sugar stuff going on at AA.
It is. And even one of their books says, it's an old book, it's like 1940s, but they still use it a lot. That says, when you have a craving, pop a candy, because it takes the craving.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it does. Because you're you're just giving, one for the other. And this is where I often say, for people who are trying to deal with their food addiction, even if alcohol is not your issue, you should probably quit drinking. Yes. You mean I can't have a drink once in a while? Well, it's basically, it's sugar without it's sugar multiplied by 8. Like it's all the effects of sugar. It's actually, there's no more sugar in it, because the yeast or the bacteria or whatever it is that's fermented the alcohol has left all the toxicity of sugar. It's eaten the sugar, but it's left the toxicity behind. So you're getting all the same crazy stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I see it all the time. And I found over the years, my clients generally, if they have more than one addiction, they have to quit all of them. They just can't. One. And the food one is usually the last one to go, almost always the last one.
Yes.
And they come to me. A lot of male addicts actually come to me with the food one as the last vestige of addiction.
Yeah. I believe that. And it's a hard one. It's a hard one as a therapist to work with, because food they can be quite needy, quite demanding, because there's nothing left to help.
Well,
the empty hole inside of them.
I feel like I'm the end of the line for these folks. It's like, oh boy, my job now is to help you get rid of your last addiction, and then what's going to be left? All the crap you haven't dealt with your entire life.
Exactly.
It's a big order, tall order.
It's a tall order for the person to live with, and it's a tall order for the therapist. Absolutely.
And I go slowly, very, very slowly. And along with that, a lot of men feel it's very unmanly to be addicted to food. Judgment. I bet they call it the wussy addiction. Like, I'm addicted to French fries. whatever
they think they might think it's more manly to be addicted to alcohol or cocaine.
Yeah,
Or-
they're like, at least
Yeah.
that was cool, you know?
Yeah, but this is there's no cool, you're right, there's no cool factor with sugar.
Yeah,
It's
not very
just
sexy.
no, not, and it's embarrassing. And
Yeah. So the next question, I think we've touched on this a bit, but in case we haven't fleshed it out completely, in your experience, Vera, I'm curious, what foods do people tend to be addicted to, and why? Is there like a hierarchy of foods here?
yeah, so it's we where we touched on it already is that you mentioned sugar and refined processed foods, because
Yeah.
when we talk about sugar, I don't mean fruits, I don't mean
Yeah.
vegetables that are sweet, like corn is sweet. But the thing about corn is a good example, actually. Corn, in the corn on the cob and stuff, eat it, it's fine. And really, how much can you eat of it? Because you've got to
Yeah.
process it and eat
A lot
too
of
much.
volume.
Exactly, and you're going to get diarrhea if you have too much. Like
Roughage, yeah.
there's kind of a built-in stop factor by the fiber, the water of whatever you're eating. But when you process something, you take away all that protection that would make you
Yeah.
not have too much. And essentially, the sugar that we use in our cake, in our pop, in our everything is high fructose corn syrup. So
Yeah.
here is that corn, which is totally fine to eat, but you extracted the syrup from the corn, the sweet from the corn, and you've got a poison that makes a person madly addictive. So
It's in everything, isn't it?
it is, it's in everything. And it's all about how long it takes the body to break it down. How much corn syrup drops would I get from one thing of corn? Nothing. But give me a pop where it's full of corn syrup. That's like 10 or 20 corns of cob. That's the difference. So
right.
They did. So when we talk about what's addictive, we're talking, first of all, refined stuff. And
Refined. Yeah.
then you could ask the question, well, what's the most addictive amongst the refined stuff? And there was a study done by Nicole Avina and I don't know, other people, where they actually mapped out of the refined food products, what are the most addictive? And they had a hierarchy. And guess what the number one was? The number one of all.
Donuts?
No.
Chocolate. Okay.
Chocolate was number one because
was it the kind of,
I'm talking with
milk chocolate?
Yes, with the milk and the and the sugar and the fat and stuff. I'm not talking about cocoa or something.
A whole different world.
So because there you have caffeine, you have salt, you have sugar, it's just a magic mix.
A trifecta of addiction.
Exactly. And then the next one under that, I don't actually remember the exact order, but in the first five, pizza. Now you think
I hear that one all the time. No.
But it doesn't matter. It's a ton of flour, which is almost sugar in terms of the processing factor. So pizza's big on the list. Potato
and pizza. I mean, I went to Italy. It's totally different. The pizza there. There's not a lot of dough. There's hardly any flour. But here it's like these deep dish things with all this. It's just a dough cake.
Yeah. And cookies, of course. Cake, of course. Fries.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That's a big one. That's in the top 10. A buttered popcorn. Now, popcorn itself, but what do you put when you put in buttered? It's got stuff in it.
Imagine eating popcorn without fat.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right.
Were potato chips in there?
Yeah, chips are in there.
That's a lot. I hear that.
So candy bars. So it's all the stuff you'd expect. But I found it interesting that pizza was in the top and fries, because those are considered savory. It's like that. I don't.
Yeah. No. I hear those. Those are
burgers like hamburgers. I'm not talking about pure burger that you might make on the grill. I'm talking about the stuff at the big.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. So I'm seeing more and more food addiction in my clients in recent years, and I attribute this to the influx of highly processed and highly palatable foods on the market today. Yes. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. We've touched on it a bit, but what are your thoughts on this phenomenon, and particularly what you think the political agenda is behind this, if there is one?
Oh, yeah. There was a study done not that long ago, I think within the last 2 weeks. I'm sorry, I don't remember because I wasn't thinking about this question. But it's one of a few, and it's not the first one. There's a few more in the UK where they actually look at the where has the food industry gotten its tentacles in to tell doctors and nutritionists what sort of guidelines they should give. And there are guidelines, and I'm talking not just I don't know how to say this. I mean, obviously, marketing, they're not that it's going to be fake truth, and we know that they're not telling us the whole truth. But you would trust a clinician like your diabetic doctor, your bariatric doctor,
or a dietitian.
The latest information, you might say, okay, who's funding your conference? It's always the food industry. It's either the food industry or the pharmaceutical industry. But what we don't know is who's funding and who's funding the actual research that is being looked into what's the best thing for diabetes. This is where we talk about peer-reviewed research, and the upper echelons of research are being funded by the food industry or the
so it's like big pharma, it sounds like.
Big pharma and big food together, and they're often the same thing. They're often the same, like the companies will have share each other. And then one thing that I wasn't aware of was that even the universities are funded by either the pharmaceuticals or big food. The hospitals, like one of our hospitals for kids, it's called Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto, had a major funding from like one of the food chains. So they had a major junk food as the first thing the kid is going to see when they walk into a hospital where there's, cancer for kids. I mean, we're giving that kind of food. So it's everywhere. And this study that I'm thinking about was the most recent where they sort of uncovered the food industry connection to funding of various programs and stuff, which or guidelines, because I'm told I have to treat a patient this way. For example, let me just give you one example. It's not about food addiction, but a person comes in with high cholesterol. I'm supposed to recommend a particular medication. It's a standard of practice, and if I don't do it, you can get me for malpractice. However, better solution would be to say, if you're eating junk food, let's cut that out completely and see what the solution is. And a good doctor will say that's the first step, but most of them, they just want to move on with the day. They don't have time to. I got to convince you into quitting junk. Here, let me just write you the script for a statin, kind of a cholesterol drug.
Wow, we could go into so much, but people could do their own research. Fascinating.
They could,
I want to go on because I want to respect your time. There's so many different ways of eating, or what we call woes now, out there, such as paleo, keto, low carb. Do you think that people with food addiction need to follow a particular way of eating to achieve success and maintain recovery?
I think that the first answer to that is, I guess it's the longer answer. I'm not going to go into it at great length, is that any plan will do, but cut out the refined carbohydrates, cut out the industrial foods, and you can eat keto, you can eat vegan, but those are diametrically opposed in a way. But it doesn't matter. You can eat any of that stuff as long as it's
eat whole foods.
Yes, whole foods. I myself am an advocate of the more middle ground of just eat real food. Like I like eating a lot of vegetables, but I don't eat processed stuff. Okay. But if that's too broad and you want something more specific, then I would say the safer option, because like a vegan option is good, but you have to be smart. You have to know.
You really know how to get, and you need to supplement.
Exactly. So I would say that the easiest one is a low carb / keto, but not extreme keto, unless you're really keen to lose weight quickly and whatever. But I don't think it's necessary to go to just eating proteins and fats. But to lean on the side of focusing on proteins and fats and reducing your carbohydrate, basically a low carb. But low carb of especially refined. Once you get rid of refined stuff, you're already eating fairly low carb, because when you're eating a complex carb, there's not that many carbs in Brussels sprouts because there's so much roughage. all that stuff. So you're actually, I would say if you want an easy answer, look at the low carb and then look at the keto for menu ideas. But basically any plan will work. You can still be a vegetarian. You just have to be a smart vegetarian. Just because it's chips with no meat in it doesn't mean it's healthy. No.
Yeah. That's excellent. I've also interviewed Joy Kitty. She's a dietitian.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
She's a low carb ketogenic dietitian. Yeah. So she'll be answering some of that. So I wanted to ask you about, in my years of being an eating disorder therapist, I found that this concept of intuitive eating, which is quite the vogue in the eating disorder community, doesn't work for everyone. And I know that I'm going to get flack for saying that, but it just doesn't. What are your thoughts, Vera, on this? I'm curious.
I think that intuitive eating is fine if you are not eating drug foods. So if you're eating real food, like, and you're not too far along the line of the food addiction period. End stage, even real food you can be addicted to, like you with nuts. Other people with dairy, they just can't.
I've seen carrots, people binging on carrots.
Yes, exactly.
Volume eating.
That's exactly. So that's where it depends on what stage you're at. But for the most part, sorry, what was the question again?
What you think about intuitive eating?
Oh, yes, intuitive eating. That for the most part, once you recognize what your trigger foods are and are not eating those, intuitive eating works for many people. As long as you're not eating addictive foods, which will overrule your intuition. But there are people at end stage who are volume addicts and have lost their ability to know what's enough.
It's like their appestat is broken.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's it, but that's a sign of later stage.
Yes. Okay. So
that's why it depends on what stage you're on. Intuitive eating will work for some stages, but not others.
Yes. So you come from a 12-step background, and millions of people around the globe have found lifelong recovery through 12-step programs.
Yes.
I love that they have a spiritual component, and I got my recovery from a 12-step program. What role do you think spirituality plays in recovery from food addiction?
I think it plays an immense role in any addiction, because what's happening is the person is trying to fill. I actually think that we addicts are spiritual seekers. We're the people who have been thirsting for something larger than what life normally gives. And so you look for that largeness in drug or in food. I want something to celebrate.
We're into meaning, purpose.
Exactly.
Why are we here? What's it all about?
Bigger than the day to day, because that's who we are. And so if you don't have a spiritual way to fill that, you're going to look for it in the whatever. And even if that spiritual practice is like a Zen thing, which says, the mundane is the most powerful, but that's a practice to actually see.
It's taken me years. I had to be in my 50s to start to even figure out what that means. But slow lane. I'm more in the slow lane now, but I was just not having that before.
No, I know. But so spirituality does not mean necessarily God, obviously. It just means a higher purpose, a higher thirst for something. And we have to do that. I mean, my higher thing is to speak and to educate and to be part of that particular world. Which, by the way, in the 12-step program is the 12th step. I feel better and I want to give back. And giving back, even if it's giving back to family, like as the elder, that's a spiritual path. All of us have to find it, I think.
I really feel that from you, Vera, that you're just so passionate and that you are giving back in tremendous ways and that you have incredible chutzpah. And I think it's, your passion overrides any fear, perhaps, I'm guessing, that you or trepidation, because you're pioneering.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And if I didn't do this, all that, and what would I do with it? I would.
What would you do?
I don't want to be in food. I'm going to put it into something that's useful. So for those of you listening, find a passion and all that energy that you're now focusing on how you hate yourself and you're eating too much, you can actually put out there and make something happen.
Exactly. This conversation is the byproduct of that passion for both of us, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. We're trying to get this information out to more people because we feel so strongly that we can help people. Yeah. So last question, then I'll let you go. For
Okay.
people who may be listening or watching this, what are some practical steps that they can take right away to begin recovery from food addiction?
Okay, so learn about it. Like you're listening to this podcast, please get my book, Food Junkies,
Yes,
Recovery from
excellent.
Food Addiction. Listen, like the podcast.
Yeah.
Learn as much as you can because it will validate. So that would be the first thing. And then you won't feel like, what's wrong with me? Well, you'll know it's not you, it's the addiction. And I think
Yeah.
then the next thing is get support, because you're gonna have to do things that are hard, and you don't want somebody undermining it saying, Esther, are you on that crazy diet again?
Yeah.
Have somebody saying, oh man, you're doing it now. Let me help you.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not going to go to the buffet because that's not good for you. We're going to go and like you want to get support and not to feel ashamed to ask for help, because we are social creatures. And then once you've got those two things in place, get rid of the sugar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Clean it out.
Yeah. 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 It seems like such a radical step to my clients, but for me, it was just basic, had to do it, and once you haven't eaten sugar in so many years, I don't even remember what it tastes like, but actually, no, I remember the rush that I would get my whole body. It was like this unbelievable high, this anticipation and the the rush, but then followed by shame and guilt soon after.
Right.
But the high that you get, the evenness that you get from not eating sugar, you can't explain that to someone unless you've lived that lifestyle for a while. It's just my life is just a beautiful hum all day long, just even energy and lots of energy, but I'm not like up and down all the time. My moods are even.
It's called equanimity.
Exactly.
Right
on. Well, this has been delightful, Vera. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Esther.
Yeah, and I know people will get so much out of it, and I'll put all your information in the show notes. And take good care. Keep doing your great work.
And I'll just end my little bit by saying, freedom tastes great.
Freedom tastes great. Yes, beautiful. If you enjoyed today's show, please take the time and subscribe to this channel. If you're on YouTube, please give this video a thumbs up and comment on what you liked about it. As well, feel free to pass this episode on to others whom you think may benefit. And of course, we always appreciate positive reviews. We would appreciate it greatly if you took the time to review the podcast on Apple so that others will want to check it out as well, and we can spread the word about these compassionate conversations. Thanks so much.